There is a very specific, unwritten rule of pet parenthood that nobody warns you about when you first get a dog. It's that moment in the backyard where you bend down to pick up their poop, take a casual glance at the grass, and realize that you are looking at something white that is actively moving. In that exact second, your stomach completely drops. A cold wave of panic washes over you, and you instantly feel like the worst pet parent on the planet. You feel dirty, you feel guilty, and you wonder, how long have these been inside my dog? Is my house contaminated? Am I a bad pet parent for not noticing sooner? Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Tony Lee, your neighborhood veterinarian. First, take a deep breath. I want you to drop the guilt right now. Intestinal parasites are incredibly stealthy, and they are one of the most common issues every single dog will face at some point in their life. Last week we talked about fixing your dog's diarrhea, but what if their stomach is upset because of something secretly living inside their intestines? So today, we are going to expose exactly what is stealing your dog's nutrients. The sad reality is that millions of pet owners panic, rush to the pet store, and buy cheap, over-the-counter chemical dewormers that don't even kill the right worms, pumping their dogs full of toxic chemicals for absolutely no reason. In this video, we are putting a stop to that. I am going to turn you into a canine parasite expert. We are going to decode your dog's poops so you know exactly what worm you are fighting. But for the sake of at-home visual, we will expose the pet store medication scam, uncover the shocking truth about how dogs actually get these worms, and most importantly, I am going to reveal a miraculous, inexpensive seed sitting in your local grocery store right now that naturally paralyzes intestinal worms and flushes them completely out of your dog's body without a single chemical medication. Hit that subscribe button to join our family of holistic, highly educated pet parents, and let's dive into chapter 1. Literally look exactly like cooks for worms. But before we can naturally flush a parasite out of the body, that literally look exactly like cooks for worms, because dogs cannot use words to tell us their stomach hurts. That they give us clues exactly like cooks for worms. There are 4 major intestinal parasites that plague domestic dogs: roundworms, tapeworms, hookworms, and whipworms. But for the sake of at-home visual diagnosis, we are going to focus on the 2 most common culprits that you will actually see with the naked eye. We call these the spaghetti and the white rice. Let's start with the spaghetti. If you look at your dog's stool, or in severe cases, if your dog violently vomits, and you see long, pale, tubular worms that literally look exactly like cooked spaghetti noodles, you are dealing with roundworms. Roundworms do not attach to the wall of the intestines. Instead, they freely swim around inside the gut, eating the nutrients right out of your dog's food before your dog's body can absorb them. Because they steal the food, dogs with severe roundworm infestations will often have a very dull, dry coat, a bizarrely swollen, pot-bellied stomach, and chronic, lingering diarrhea that just won't go away. Now let's talk about the white rice. This is the one that grosses owners out the most. If you are petting your dog and you notice tiny, flat, white or yellowish segments stuck to the fur around their rear end, or if you look at their fresh stool and see tiny white segments stretching and moving like little inchworms, you are dealing with tapeworms. When tapeworm segments dry out, they shrink and look exactly like hard grains of raw white rice stuck to the dog's bed or the carpet. Tapeworms are absolute biological nightmares. Unlike the roundworm that freely swims, a tapeworm has a mouth covered in razor-sharp microscopic hooks. They use these hooks to violently anchor themselves deep into the lining of your dog's intestinal wall. Once anchored, they grow longer and longer by creating identical segments. Those little white grains of rice you see on the fur, those are actual pieces of the tapeworm's body breaking off and exiting the dog to spread their eggs. Now that you know how to identify the enemy, your natural instinct is to get rid of them instantly. And this brings us to chapter 2, the pet store scam. When an owner sees a worm, panic sets in. They drive straight to the massive retail pet store, find the medicine aisle, and stare at a wall of brightly colored boxes promising to deworm your dog. They buy a $20 box of pills, go home, and force the dog to swallow it. A week goes by, and suddenly they see the white rice moving on the dog's bed again. Why didn't it work? Why is your dog still infested? Because of incredibly deceptive marketing. Over-the-counter deworming medications sold in grocery stores and pet shops usually only contain a single active ingredient, often something called parental pamoate. Now, parental is highly effective at paralyzing roundworms, but it does absolutely nothing, zero, to a tapeworm. The tapeworm simply laughs at that medication, remaining firmly anchored to your dog's intestinal wall. If you want to kill a tapeworm with traditional pharmaceuticals, you need an entirely different, very heavy, prescription-only medication called praziquantel, which you can only get from a licensed veterinarian. But here is the terrifying truth. Pet parents don't realize this, so they assume the first pet store pill just wasn't strong enough. So they go back, buy another box, and double the dose. You are now pumping your dog's liver and kidneys full of heavy, synthetic chemical pesticides that aren't even targeting the right parasite. You are taxing their fragile immune system and wrecking their gut microbiome for absolutely no reason. Stop buying over-the-counter chemical dewormers. If you are going to use pharmaceutical medication, you must take a stool sample to the vet so they can prescribe the exact, highly targeted pill. But wait. If the tapeworms keep coming back, how on earth is your dog actually getting them? You have a clean house. You have a clean yard. How did this microscopic monster get inside your best friend? Welcome to Chapter 3, the bizarre flea connection. This is one of the most fascinating and misunderstood life cycles in all of veterinary medicine. Most people assume that dogs get tapeworms by sniffing infected poop at the dog park or eating dirty grass. That is not how it happens. Dogs get tapeworms by swallowing a flea. Let me explain this bizarre biological loop. When a tapeworm releases its eggs into the environment, those microscopic eggs sit in the carpet or the grass. Adult fleas do not eat tapeworm eggs, but baby flea larvae do. A baby flea larva crawls along the ground, eats the tapeworm egg, and then spins a cocoon. Weeks later, that flea hatches into an adult, jumping onto your dog to drink their blood. But hiding silently inside the belly of that flea is a microscopic, perfectly preserved baby tapeworm. The flea bites your dog. Your dog feels the sharp, itchy bite. Your dog whips its head around, aggressively nibbles and bites at its own fur to stop the itch, and accidentally swallows the flea whole. The flea travels down your dog's esophagus and drops into the stomach. The intense acids in your dog's stomach completely dissolve the flea's body. But the baby tapeworm inside the flea is genetically immune to stomach acid. The flea dissolves, the tapeworm is set free, and it travels right into the warm, nutrient-rich intestines. It uses its hooks to anchor into the gut wall, and boom, the cycle is complete. You have a massive tapeworm infestation. As a veterinarian, I need you to understand this golden rule. You can pump your dog full of deworming medications every single day for a year. But if you do not eradicate the fleas on their body and the fleas living in your carpet, your dog will never, ever be cured. The tapeworms will come back over and over again. You must destroy the flea to defeat the worm. Okay, we have covered the terrifying biology. We understand the pet store scam, and we know exactly how the worms hijack the gut. Now it is time for the miracle. What if I told you that we do not need heavy pharmaceutical chemicals to eradicate these parasites? What if nature had already designed the absolute perfect, biologically safe weapon to destroy intestinal worms, and it is sitting in the baking aisle of your local grocery store for less than $5? Welcome to Chapter 4. The 1 teaspoon miracle. I want you to go to the store and buy a bag of raw, unsalted pumpkin seeds. They are sometimes called pepitas. Now please listen to my veterinary warning before you buy them. You must buy 100% raw pumpkin seeds. You cannot buy the heavily roasted ones, and you absolutely cannot buy salted or seasoned seeds. High amounts of salt will damage a dog's kidneys, and roasting the seeds destroys the magical chemical compound hiding inside them. They must be raw, green, and completely unseasoned. Now, before I explain how this works, a vital medical warning. This natural remedy is highly effective for roundworms and tapeworms. But if you have a young puppy, or if your dog has pale gums, extreme lethargy, or bloody diarrhea, you may be dealing with hookworms or whipworms. These parasites feed aggressively on blood and can be fatal to young dogs. In those severe cases, you must skip the home remedies, go straight to your vet and get a prescription dewormer. Natural remedies are for stable, healthy adult dogs. But for your standard roundworms and tapeworms, why are raw pumpkin seeds a holistic miracle? It all comes down to an incredibly powerful natural amino acid found almost exclusively in pumpkin seeds called cucurbitacin. In traditional and holistic veterinary medicine, cucurbitacin is highly revered because it is a natural anthelmintic, which is a medical term meaning it expels parasitic worms from the body. But it doesn't just kill them, it uses biological warfare. When your dog digests the raw pumpkin seeds, the cucurbitacin amino acid enters the intestinal tract and is absorbed by the parasites. This amino acid actively targets the nervous system of the worm, causing rapid, severe, full-body paralysis. Think back to the tapeworm. Remember those razor-sharp microscopic hooks they use to painfully bite into the intestinal wall? When the cucurbitacin paralyzes the tapeworm, its jaw completely goes slack. It physically releases its grip on the intestinal lining. The worm is detached, paralyzed, and totally defenseless. But we must administer it correctly for it to work. A dog's digestive system cannot break down the hard outer shell of a whole pumpkin seed effectively. If you just throw a handful of whole seeds in their bowl, they will pass right through their body whole, completely unabsorbed and entirely useless. You must grind the raw pumpkin seeds into a fine, powdery dust. You can use a cheap electric coffee grinder, a food processor, or a traditional mortar and pestle. By grinding them into a fine dust, you shatter the cell walls of the seed, unlocking a massive, concentrated dose of the paralyzing cucurbitacin that the dog's digestive tract can instantly absorb. Now, how much do you actually give them? Write this down. The magic golden ratio is exactly 1/4 of a teaspoon of finely ground pumpkin seeds for every 10 pounds of your dog's body weight, mixed right into their food once a day. So if you have a 40-pound dog, you will mix exactly 1 full teaspoon of the magical ground powder into their dinner. For a tiny 10-pound Yorkie, just 1/4 of a teaspoon is perfect. You will mix this into their meal once a day until you no longer see any signs of worms in their stool, which usually takes about a week to 10 days of natural flushing. We have paralyzed the worms. They have released their agonizing grip on your dog's delicate intestinal wall. But now we have a bunch of paralyzed worms floating aimlessly in the gut. How do we ensure they are rapidly and completely flushed out of the system? Welcome to Chapter 5, the gut scraper. We are going to use physical friction to sweep the intestines completely clean. Right next to the magic pumpkin seed dust, I want you to take a whole, fresh, raw carrot. Wash it and use a cheese grater to shred a small handful of raw carrot directly over their dinner bowl. Why raw carrots? Raw carrots are incredibly high in insoluble fiber. Unlike soluble fiber, which turns into a gel in the stomach, insoluble fiber holds its physical structure entirely as it travels through the intense acid of the canine digestive system. When your dog swallows these raw carrot shreds, they travel through the dark, winding tunnels of the intestines like microscopic broom bristles. As the fibrous carrot pieces slide through the colon, they physically grab, scrape, and sweep all of those paralyzed worms and detached tapeworm segments right out of the intestinal tract, pushing them forcefully into the stool to be completely expelled from the body. For the dosing here, the golden rule is simple. Mix in 1 tablespoon of raw, finely shredded carrots for every